The casino always wins, that's what they say. But in 1995, one man proved them wrong. He didn't hack the casino from the outside. He worked the system from within. Can you beat a system if you built it yourself? And what's more dangerous, greed or knowledge? In 1995, the gambling world was shaken by a story that proved even the most secure systems can fail when the keys end up in the wrong hands. One of the most famous cases involved not a professional card sharp or a criminal mastermind, but an ordinary employee, Ron Harris, a man who managed to hack a casino from within its own system. He wasn't an avid gambler. Before this, he had never been seen as a cheat or a con artist. He didn't run with criminal circles or live a lavish life. Ron Harris was an ordinary programmer, a man who wrote the code for slot machines. And that was the key to the whole story. So what did he do? He changed a slot machine's code. With an accomplice, he hit machines for payouts exceeding $100,000 at a time. But he didn't get there overnight. To grasp the scale of what happened, we need to break it down step by step. So, our protagonist was exceptionally skilled with computers. Ronald Dale Harris was born on June 3, 1956, in the United States, into an ordinary family. He wasn't a troubled teenager, didn't get into bad situations, and generally didn't draw much attention to himself. He did consistently well in school, and his favorite subject, as he later admitted in interviews, was mathematics. Even in his youth, Ron stood out among his peers for his reserved nature and intense focus. He wasn't the life of the party, didn't chase popularity, and preferred spending time alone. During his college years, when he was around 20, he became interested in programming. Computers became his main hobby and, in many ways, the only thing that truly captivated him. Back then, computer technology was advancing rapidly. For some, it was just a trendy interest, for others, a future career. For Harris, computers became an entire world, one ruled by logic, algorithms, and precise calculations. There were no emotions, no impulsive choices, no human factor, at least that's how it seemed to him. With strong education and steadily improving technical skills, Ron landed a fairly prestigious job. In 1990, he caught the attention of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, the agency responsible for ensuring casinos in the state operated legally and fairly. At first glance, it looked like a dream position, a stable salary, a high level of trust, and access to the most advanced technology in the gambling industry. Harris's duties included inspecting every slot machine that was to be installed in Nevada. The young specialist was granted full access to the machine's software, microchips, and internal documentation. No one suspected that, along with that access, he had effectively been handed every card he would need for the con that was to come. The casino sells randomness, but inside algorithms, repeating, predictable. For those who know where to look, to understand how something like this was even possible, you first have to understand how slot machines work. Most players genuinely believe slots are pure chance and that each spin has no connection to the one before it. In reality, it's a bit more complicated. At the core of slot machines are so-called pseudorandom number generators. This isn't a chaotic stream of luck. It's a strictly defined set of algorithms. They run on standard mathematical formulas and what are known as seed values, initial values that are generated continuously, nonstop. That means the outcome of each spin is determined by the state of the generator at a specific moment in time. On paper, it looks random, but in practice the result depends on the most recent sequence of numbers. So you can't really call the process truly random. All mathematical operations inside a pseudorandom number generator follow the same rules and, over time, lead to repeatable outcomes with minor variations. That's the trait that makes the system vulnerable, but only to those who actually understand how it's built. The average player has neither the knowledge nor the resources to analyze these algorithms. To them, a slot is flashing lights, spinning reels, and hope, but to a programmer like Harris, it was just code. Harris inspected the machines. They trusted him, he had access, and no one asked questions. By the time the idea of a con began to take shape in Ron's mind, he was around 35. He had been working for the board for several years and had built a reputation as a decent, reliable employee. His colleagues trusted him. Management had no doubts about his honesty, and reviews of his work were little more than a formality. But that trust is exactly what became the soil for a dangerous thought. In the early 90s, most slot machines used eprom chips. Their key feature was that the code on them could be erased and written again. It was considered a technical necessity. Software was updated regularly. For most employees, it was just a detail. For Harris, it was a vulnerability. He understood that he could change a machine's behavior, so it would pay out under certain conditions. Not constantly, not for every player, only when a specific sequence of actions was performed. From the outside, it would look like rare luck. For a long time, the idea remained only a theory. Harris didn't rush into anything. He understood perfectly well that the smallest mistake could cost him his career, his freedom, and his reputation. He didn't make the machines pay out all the time. Only sometimes, at the right moment, for the right person. In the end, Ron decided to go through with it. He developed a simple but effective way to make money. Several slots were reprogrammed to trigger jackpots when deposits were made in a specific sequence. It didn't look like a hack in the classic sense. The machines kept operating within allowable parameters, but with a pre-written, lucky script. By the time he put the scheme into action, Harris already held a solid position at the board. No one doubted his integrity, so his work was barely supervised. In total, he reprogrammed more than 30 slots intended for Las Vegas casinos. However, he couldn't take part in the gambling himself. A big win by an employee of the regulatory body would immediately raise suspicion. So he needed a partner. The choice fell on an old friend, Reed McNeil. Money doesn't give away code. It gives away behavior, emotions. And that's exactly what gave them away. From 1993 to 1995, the accomplices successfully won hundreds of thousands of dollars. The exact amounts were never confirmed, since the fraudsters managed to remain unnoticed for a long time. The wins were rare but massive. Casinos wrote them off as luck and statistical anomalies. But Harris had no intention of stopping. He became more and more absorbed by the idea of intellectual superiority over the system. He saw weak points where others saw only chance. In the 90s, random number generators had serious limitations. Their operation was based on previous results. If you understood the principles of the underlying algorithm, you could predict the outcome of the next play with a high degree of accuracy. Harris decided to go further. The odds of winning, 1 in 230,000. But he won, and that became a problem. This idea was simpler than the previous one. Ron copied the random number generator code onto his computer. Now all he had to do was enter the results of the last draw to predict the next winning combinations with a high degree of accuracy. To test his theory, he and Reed went to Atlantic City. Early one morning, they arrived at Bali's Atlantic City Casino Hotel. Harris understood that his presence on the gaming floor could attract attention, so he spent most of the time in the room. From there, he analyzed the data and relayed information to his partner. Reed only needed to buy 10 keno tickets for a total of $100. One of them was a winner and paid out $100,000. The odds of that outcome were about 1 in 230,000. The casino staff didn't suspect anything unusual. Keno was considered a game of pure luck. But this is where everything went off script. The casino changed the code, but not the system. The biggest vulnerability is the person inside it, especially if he's too smart. Two things worked against Reed McNeil. First, it was a record keno win in Atlantic City. Under New Jersey law, any jackpot over $35,000 was subject to a mandatory review. Second, the winner's behavior didn't match how other players typically react. He showed too much emotion and insisted on being paid in cash. While in cases like this, the casino would more often issue a check. Those small details drew attention. An investigation began. Soon, The trail led to Ron Harris, the man who knew the system too well. Harris's story became a turning point for the entire gambling industry. After the exposure, security protocols were revised, generator algorithms were changed, and oversight of employees was tightened. This case made one thing clear. The machine isn't the weak point, the person is. Not the code, but trust. Even the most complex system collapses if access falls into the hands of someone who understands it better than anyone else. Ron Harris wasn't a typical fraudster. He wasn't chasing luxury or fame. What drove him was a sense of control and intellectual superiority. He wanted to prove, above all, to himself, that he could beat the system. And in that sense, he did win. But the price of that victory was far too high.